All right, let's dive into this explainer. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're setting the stage for an exploration into a story that almost all of us think we know perfectly. I'm talking about a great green room, a telephone, a red balloon, and a picture of a cow jumping over the moon. It is an absolute cornerstone of childhood, but as we're about to see, the history, the psychology, and the hidden depths of this simple bedtime story are completely fascinating. But before we actually step inside that great green room, I want to pose a macro-level question to you. Why do we keep telling stories about the moon? I really want you to think about humanity's enduring fascination with the night sky for a second. Because for literally as long as we've had language, the moon has been a destination for our most fantastic tales. It's like a giant blank canvas in the sky, just waiting for human imagination. So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the moon in fiction, then look at crafting a bedtime classic before exploring the infamous library ban. Finally, we'll uncover hidden details in art and wrap up with the psychology of comfort. Section 1. The moon in fiction, from ancient myths to modern stories. To really understand the cultural weight of the moon in literature, we have to look back at the grand human tradition of looking upward. If you chart the evolution of lunar storytelling, you'll see a pretty incredible timeline. Way back in the 2nd century, the Greek writer Lucian wrote True History, which depicted an imaginary voyage to the moon involving a fountain and the Pillars of Hercules. Fast forward to the 10th century, and you've got the Japanese folktale, The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, where a mysterious moon princess dazzles Earth before eventually returning home. And by 1516, in Ludovico Ariosto's Italian epic poem Orlando Furioso, the moon is portrayed as this kind of cosmic lost and found, the place where everything lost on Earth can be found. The protagonist actually recovers his lost wits in a bottle up there. So for centuries, the moon was this mythical, distant destination reserved for epic heroes and magical beings. Section 2, Crafting a Bedtime Classic, the origins of a 1947 masterpiece. Now we're going to zoom into the 20th century to see exactly how a woman named Margaret Wise Brown brought this grand lunar tradition out of the realm of epic poetry and straight into the modern nursery. Picture this, it's 1935, and Brown enrolls at the Bank Street Experimental School in New York City. The founder there, Lucy Sprague Mitchell, champions something called the here and now philosophy. She believed, and this was a big deal at the time, that children actually preferred stories about everyday, real-world topics and routines rather than your traditional fantasy, fairy tales, and magical journeys. Margaret Wise Brown took this philosophy, completely internalized it, combined it with her own observations of kids, and used it to build the incredibly familiar, comforting world that we see in her writing today. Get this, the real inspiration for the story actually came from Brown's own childhood routine of saying goodnight to her toys. In 1945, that memory resurfaced in a dream. She literally woke up and wrote the story, originally calling it Goodnight Room. Now, when it came to the art, Brown gave the illustrator Clement Hurd very little direction. So why are the characters anthropomorphic bunnies? Well, honestly, Hurd just felt he was way better at drawing rabbits than humans. And here is one of my favorite details. The narrative tracks a very specific window of time. The book begins at 7 p.m. and ends at 8:10 p.m. So as you read, time is actually passing in the background. Section 3, the infamous library ban, a clash of tastes. You'd probably assume a book this beloved was an instant, universal hit, right? Well, it actually faced a surprisingly rocky start, mostly thanks to a very powerful critic. Enter Anne Carroll Moore, the head children's librarian at the New York Public Library. She did not hold back. She actually called the book unbearably sentimental. And you have to understand, Moore was an absolute tastemaker and arbiter of children's literature, not just in New York, but across the entire country. Because she hated the book, feeling it lacked a meaningful narrative structure and any real educational value, she effectively banned it from the New York Public Library. The library literally didn't even stock it on their shelves until 1972, which was the book's 25th anniversary. And early on, the sales definitely reflected this resistance. It only sold about 6,000 copies in the fall of 1947. But here is the absolute kicker: 48 million. Despite that library ban and the initial slow sales, the post-World War II baby boom propelled the book into this massive, slow burn sensation. Annual sales went from a measly 1,500 in 1953 to nearly 20,000 by 1970. Today, it sells about 800,000 copies a year. By 2017, cumulative sales hit an astonishing estimated 48 million copies. It completely bypassed the critics and found its way directly into the hands of the people who mattered most: parents and children. Section 4.
Hidden details and art, the scavenger hunt. Let's look a little closer at Clement Hurd's illustrations, because there are some brilliant visual Easter eggs hidden in this book that a lot of people have totally missed for decades.
Check out this meticulous attention to detail. First up, the cow jumping over the moon, which is a fun nod to the Hey Diddle Diddle nursery rhyme. Its udder was actually reduced to an anatomical blur to dodge 1940s censorship. Crazy, right? Second, notice the self-referential art. That painting of the bunny fly fishing, that's a direct nod to Brown and Hurd's earlier book, The Runaway Bunny, which, by the way, is also sitting wide open on the bookshelf. Third, there is a tiny, ever-present mouse hiding in every single spread. And finally, those clocks. The illustrations alternate between black and white object spreads and full-color room spreads. As you flip through, the two clocks in the room correctly reflect the passing time in 10-minute intervals, and you can even track the moon slowly rising up in the window. The whole book essentially functions as a built-in scavenger hunt for kids.
Section 5, The Psychology of Comfort, Why the Great Green Room Works. We're going to zoom all the way into the micro level now and look at the deep psychological analysis of why this specific arrangement of words and pictures comforts us so profoundly. A major breakthrough in understanding this comes from researcher Joseph Stanton, who identifies a motif he calls the child alone in the wide world. Stanton argues that the child is at the dead center of this narrative, specifically because there is a distinct lack of a true active parental figure in the Great Green Room. Think about it. The voice of the book isn't the child, but rather an omniscient narrator who completely understands what the child is looking at, finding comfort, resolution, and independence in being left alone to just survey their surroundings. That's central to why the book is so incredibly soothing. Let's break down the specific psychological functions at play here. Take the old lady whispering hush, for instance. Stanton notes she's treated almost as a feature of the landscape, like an objectified proxy. She safely delivers the parent's bedtime message, reminding the child to be quiet, but without being this looming, dominant parental figure. Then we have the empty chairs. Drawing from principles of emotion-focused therapy, the empty chair task is actually a tool often used to process complicated grief and separation. By looking out at the empty chairs and projecting comfort onto them, the child processes the micro-separation of bedtime and starts building their independence. Finally, all those real objects, the balloon, the mush, the socks, they ground the child in reality, bringing that here and now educational philosophy to life.
Which brings us to this wonderful insight from Canadian artist Matthew Robin Nye, who actually built a life-size exhibit of the Green Room. He said, "The book deviates from the standard fairy tale in that it does not have a moral, but a rhythm, a tempo. It isn't about a hero going on some grand journey. It represents the environmental static of a comforting experience. It's literally the lively background texture of childhood. It teaches kids that life is stable and that their environment can be trusted as they drift off to sleep."
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Knowing the history, the hidden artistry, and the deep psychological mechanics of this story, I have to ask you, when you look into the Great Green Room, who is really saying goodnight? Is it the bunny? Is it that omniscient narrator? Or is it the child inside all of us, just finding a little bit of peace in the vast, quiet dark? Think about that the next time you see this masterpiece sitting on a bookshelf. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the magic behind the moon.